You know how David Lynch has his weather forecast on YouTube?
Here in LA, it's raining, cloudy, very still right now, 45 degrees Fahrenheit. It's around 7 Celsius.
So I think I'll begin in the same manner. Good morning. Today is a sunny, hot day here in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. It is 27 degrees Celsius outside, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Still, I think there's no better time than today, on a Sunday morning, to make this video. So I finally want to draw a conclusion of my Asian Readathon that took place in May. I've read 5 books that fall into the 5 prompts of the Asian Readathon that was announced earlier this year. So yeah, let's actually go prompt by prompt, and I will announce what I was planning to read, what I read, and what I think about it. And let's begin with the first prompt, which is read a book written by an Asian author. And for this prompt, I selected The 7 Moons of Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka. As you know, I picked a couple of books from the local libraries. So, for example, this library copy has no beautiful dust cover, but I'll put the picture here. So yes, this is the Booker Prize winner of 2022, and I decided to select it as the book of the Asian author. And what can I say? It is a good book, but I'm afraid this is just not my cup of tea. I can't say I didn't enjoy it. There were a couple of moments that I particularly liked and enjoyed, and I think I'll cherish all my life. But in general, this idea, this plot, let's say, of reincarnation in any form in order to have a closure of some sort, nothing new, right? But what's really great about this book is that in this very fictional form, it actually combines all this local mythology, but also local history and relationship with other countries in Sri Lanka. And this aspect of the book I really enjoyed and appreciated very much. So yeah, I don't usually rate books, I don't give like stars or anything. So I just say it's a good read. Was it worth it? I don't know, but I'm glad that I, let's say, was introduced to this author, and I'm glad that I'm like now a little bit updated on what is going on in the literature in that area of the world. And here, actually, the thing, I was a bit disappointed in myself as a reader. I don't know why I couldn't appreciate the work of the Booker Prize winner. Maybe, again, I don't understand the whole politics behind this book, the whole mythology, and maybe that made me like appreciate it less. I don't know. But yes, that's it for this book. I'm really sorry for not actually falling in love with it, because I know that a lot of people love it and a lot of people understand it, let's say. I probably not the right person, not the right reader for this book, unfortunately. Okay, the next prompt is read a book featuring a friendship between at least 2 Asian characters. So for that book, I selected Please Look After Mom, and just because I've seen this book in the list suggested by the creator of the Readathon, and somebody added this book into that prompt. However, I have to admit, and just as expected, this is a family story. There is no particular accent on the friendship. Of course, we can consider relationship between family members as, for example, friendship, but I think the author Kyung-sook Shin is actually clear about her intentions. She is telling the story about the mother and about how she is perceived by other members of this family, and what she actually sees with her eyes. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. We also selected it for our little book club, and we read it, and when we gathered actually last month, we discussed like the parts that we liked and that we didn't like, and I was surprised that some people actually did enjoy it, because when they began to read this book, they expected like almost like a thriller detective story, which actually ended up a very deep psychological investigation into this relationship between family members. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every moment of it. I remember when I was preparing to reading this book, I was scrolling through, I don't know, description of this book, I think. Anyways, I found the comparison of this book with the famous Rashomon movie, which is based on the novel that is called In the Grove. And indeed, so in the Rashomon movie, there are three, let's say, story perspectives. And although they are like all plausible, we don't know what is the truth. And in this book, the author didn't concentrate all her attention on the fact that truth is elusive and like maybe we should not trust these people. No, I think she made her statement that yes, we all share the same history, but we have just different impressions about them, or we memorize things that other people that are also participated in these actions and these events not necessarily share with us. Maybe they just memorize or remembered something, something different, maybe some other details, or maybe something that's more important to them. And so yes, in this sense, I think that is a fantastic literary work. And as you can see, I made a couple of notes. There are moments that I particularly enjoyed. They will be like in my collection of like great moments in literature. So yeah, I really like that. I would recommend it actually to everybody. It's a very philosophical book. There are a lot of moments to think about it, and the ending is quite interesting, I would say. We had a very long discussion about what that could mean and yes, what is actually the outcome of this book. Although sometimes it doesn't matter. Let's just move to the next prompt, which is read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that is focused on identity and self-discovery. I know that in my case, that's maybe just a little bit of cheating, but for this prompt, I selected a non-fiction work, which is America for Americans, a history of xenophobia in the United States by Erika. I mentioned this book not just in my TBR, but also in my 24 hours Asian Readathon, and there I already gave a little bit of my thoughts, but I think I don't have any additional thoughts, let's say. Like, it's a great work of nonfiction. There are a lot of information that I didn't know. It is very interesting that she also included, for example, the first settlement of German people as the target of racism or victims of racism and xenophobia in the United States. I think this book would be a great read not just to those who live in the United States, but maybe also some people who live in other countries but have the same ethnic groups that those who immigrated back then into the United States. So, for example, if you're German, Japanese, maybe if you live in Africa or in Vietnam, that would be interesting for you also to read and to learn how some of the ancestors who ended up in the United States, what was their condition, and yes, and how tragic their destinies were. It is a very informative book, but at the same time, I think it is relatively easy to read because Erika Lee paves a very, let's say, simple way in order to approach this very dark, very complicated history of humanity. So yeah, this is it for America for Americans, and that is also a library copy, so I need to bring it back. The next prompt is read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that shows them going on an adventure. For that, I selected Run and Hide by Pankaj Mishra. Again, this is a library copy and I don't have a dust cover, but here again, the beautiful cover. So what can I say? I actually had difficulty to read this book, so I began reading it. I don't know, I was a bit tired, so I downloaded an audiobook, and I ended up actually finishing an audiobook rather than the hard copy. However, when I was hearing like some interesting, very peculiar, very observant things, I would come back to the book and find this place and actually photograph it. I really wanted to have it on my phone, let's say, or in my notes, because this is a library copy and I need to bring it back. I actually, first in the beginning again, I thought that I might not like it, but I actually ended up enjoying it very much. In the beginning of this book, we have, let's say, three main characters who are studying at this very respectful university, and but their lives kind of like split in three. One goes like an IT company, let's say, and is very successful in IT business. We lose his side very soon in the book, and actually he becomes like school student you were best friends with, but now you're only hearing news about, and that was his case. And another two students, we kind of have close look at their lives, and when it begins as the story of, let's say, three friends who are coming from the very poor background, or like two of them are coming from the very poor background, and then we're seeing how they build up their life. And then in the second part of the book, we actually switch to the relationship between one of the characters with another new character who is, well, presumably his girlfriend, and they're dating, we're exploring their relationship, what is like different and difficult about them. And yes, and that was very interesting. What I really enjoyed it, and why I think is actually falls into the prompt of adventurous book, is that because the main character travels with his aforementioned girlfriend into London, and they meet different people of different nationalities there. They interact with each other, and in those secular, let's say, highly intellectual conversations, we learn not just about our characters, but also about this society and the zeitgeist and like what is going on, the whole environment, and we learn about it very well, and I really enjoyed it. Some parts were also quite relatable to me because, growing up in the, let's say, developing country and then moving to the developed country, and you have this, cultural shock, let's say, of how people are like perceiving things around them. And so yeah, that was very like close to me, and that part of the book that I really enjoyed. Again, I made a lot of notes, a lot of excerpts and episodes that I'll keep close to my heart. I would actually recommend it to everybody because I think everybody can find something interesting in this book, because it's not just about, let's say, friendship or family or, I don't know, love. It's everything, because just as real life, in real life we have everything. We are not focused on one thing, and this is what I really like about this book. This is like modern realism, I would say, and I really like that. The last prompt of the Asian Readathon was to read a book about Asian character who is either a hot mess, famous, or eccentric. It was allowed to read a work of non-fiction, such as memoir, for example, or autobiography or biography, and I actually promised to myself that I will read this bulky book that is the biography of Viktor Tsoi. Viktor Tsoi was a musician who was active in the 80s in the Soviet Union. He's half Korean, and for me personally it was very important to finally read and learn about Korean history, let's say, in Russia and Soviet Union through his story, but I actually couldn't finish it. I actually maybe covered a couple of parts. Basically, this book consists of memories of different people who worked and knew Viktor Tsoi, and I think this is one of the reasons why it makes it difficult to read this book, because you divide the life of the person into different, let's say, stages, and then the author of this biography, he divided the memories of these people in these different life stages of one person. And it is very important, let's say, historically, from the historical perspective, but it is very difficult to read as, for entertainment. I was also thinking maybe to make a separate video about it, because some of you actually make a comment and ask me to make a video about Viktor Tsoi, and I was thinking about it. I'm actually still thinking about it, so obviously I will continue reading it, but maybe not that fast, and I will be like working with it very closely. I also, while I was reading this, 100 pages or so, in parallel I was listening a lot of his music. I was reading some extra literature, for example, a memoir of his first wife, and yes, that was very also informative. I learned a lot about that era. And another difficult thing about me, whenever I read the nonfiction book about like a particular person, not just historical period, I sometimes can be lost in like context. So I need to go to the internet and Google, oh, who's this person, and then how they related to like our main character. So that took a little bit of more time. So that's why I decided that for my last prompt, I'll count this book. So this is the little memoir that is called Dear Girls by Ellie Wong. Ellie Wong is quite famous comedian and actress, and she wrote her memoir book in the form of letter to her daughters. And that is such a hilarious book, I have to admit. Hilarious, but at the same time, it actually goes deep into exploration of like what it is to be a woman in comedy, what it is to be mother in comedy, and in general, what is it to be a comedian and what it takes to be this person and to have this profession. So again, for me, it was a very great introduction to the world of stand-up comedy and comedy in general, and I enjoyed a lot. I would recommend it to everybody because it's such a sincere story. So it is comedic, it is funny, but not in a dull, stupid way. It is actually like smart funny, let's say. And some things that maybe can be considered outrageous if you read them. I'm not the person who's afraid of outrageous things, and I think in the history of literature there are like worse things that were written by men rather than by Asian women. So yeah, I appreciate it very much, I enjoyed it, and I think I can recommend it to everybody because again, it is lighthearted but at the same time quite deep and sometimes dark. That's a great combination, isn't it? So yeah, that's it for my Asian Readathon. This is all the books that I read in May. Really satisfied with that because not only I managed to cover all the prompts, although some of them are questionable, but if I shuffle it and maybe like consider books like and put them in a different prompts, maybe that would actually cover all of them. But what I really also enjoy is that I managed to combine different authors from different ethnic groups or different nationalities. So for example, Ellie Wong, well, okay, she's half Chinese, but she's also half Vietnamese, so I will consider it as the book from a Vietnamese person. Pankaj Mishra is from India. Erika, as I already mentioned, is Chinese American. Kyung-sook Shin is Korean. Proud of her. And finally, Shehan Karunatilaka is a Sri Lankan author. So yeah, that's it for now. I hope you have a great, hot, messy day. I hope you enjoyed my video and I hope you give a chance to some of these books or maybe all of them. And let me also know in the comments if you would be interested in listening to the story of Viktor Tsoi, a Soviet musician, and how he became like so influential and famous. Because if more people would be interested in it, I think it would be more motivation for me to make it. That's it for now. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you very, very soon. Goodbye, have a great day.